The house I grew up in was not fancy by any means, but it was one of the larger homes in our area. When we moved in, I was only 3, but I remember it being such a happy time. My parents always say that they were blissful around that time. My dad just closed on his first real estate sale, and my mom's work was just published in National Geographic. They put sizable down payments on a new house and new minivan. My mom always wanted to be a soccer mom, but she also didn't want to lose out on a career, so she had both. She worked hard in her career and at home, so Dad made sure she was getting the home she had always dreamed of. It had 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, and it sat on 3 acres of land with a pond in the backyard. The house itself had a cozy cottage feel. My mom swore that she felt at home from the second they pulled up to it. My oldest sister says the opposite. There were 7 years between her and I, so she was 10 and much more aware of what was happening. My sister Julia said the day of the showing, my parents sent her and I outside to play on the swing set, while the adults talked in the living room with the giant old windows that overlooked the yard. She said she was pushing me on the swing and heard a little boy call out the word help as if someone was hurting him. She was only 10, but she leapt into action and bolted towards his voice, leaving me on the swing by myself. She was gone from my side for about 2 minutes before my mom realized I was swinging alone, and came out hollering for her. Panicked, my mom came running into the woods and found my sister crying on the ground. Julia was sad that she couldn't find the hurt little boy, and she just knew she was going to get yelled at for leaving me unattended. My mom consoled her and promised her dad would find the little boy and get him to safety. Meanwhile, Mom came back to me clinging to the realtor, which happened to be Dad's best friend. Of course, my sister didn't get into trouble because it wasn't her responsibility to care for me. She was only 10 and just doing what any 10-year-old would have done given the circumstances. About 15 minutes later, Dad came out and said, "Julia, I don't know what you heard. It must have been someone's TV. But there is no little boy out there. There's no one." Julia swears that this was a sign. She tried telling my parents she didn't want to move in, but they reassured her on moving day she would love it, and she was just afraid of the big change, going from a smaller trailer to a big house. But about 2 weeks later, Julia and I were playing up in her room when we heard noises up in the attic. I only have faint memories from the time, but I do remember going up there with her, knowing Mom would freak out if she knew. There was a pretty pink and purple ball rolling around when we reached the top of the stairs. I didn't realize, being all of 3 years old, that it was not good that the ball was rolling itself. Julia panicked and rushed me back downstairs, making me leave the pretty ball behind. The next day, Julia overheard my mom telling my dad that there was a loud crash in the attic the previous night. He said he'd check it out and headed up the stairs. He came back down a few minutes later, cursing and mumbling something about needing an exterminator. From what Julia could gather, Dad had found a heavy box knocked over with the contents strewn about. The exterminator arrived the next day, and according to Julia, he said there was no sign of any animal ever being up there. In fact, it was one of the cleanest, sturdiest old attics he'd seen lately. A few weeks went by without any incident, at least no incidences that Julia or I remember. Then, one Friday night, after pizza and a movie, Julia and I were fast asleep on our bed of pillows in the living room, when we heard Mom scream from somewhere upstairs. Julia, being protective, told me to stay where I was, and she covered me up and handed me my teddy bear. I wasn't told anything until I was much older. All I knew was that in the middle of the night, we packed up suitcases and went to stay with my grandma for a few days. When I was old enough, my sister told me the full story. That night, Mom and Dad had left us sleeping downstairs, set the alarm, and went up to bed. Dad fell asleep first, like usual, and Mom drifted off shortly after. She was suddenly woken up when her covers were ripped off of her, and she said she felt the coldest air she had felt in her life, as if she was in a room with 5 air conditioners all blowing on her. While we were at Grandma's house, Mom and Dad had someone come do a cleanse on the house. We all slept in the same room for nearly 2 weeks until we were almost certain the cleanse had worked. It's an experience that Mom still talks about and can explain in such vivid detail. Julia knew from the start that something was off, but of course, who's going to listen to a 10-year-old saying, "Don't buy this house, I don't like it"? Perhaps we should. Well, maybe we should all bring Julia with when we look at houses. She could make a side business out of it, because personally, I would trust her judgment after that. Well, friends, if you have a paranormal story you would like to have featured in an upcoming video, drop it in the comments or email it to the address in the description below. And with that, see you tomorrow, friends.